Have you ever started to feel bites or sharp pains on your feet or legs, only to look down and suddenly realize that you're standing in the middle of an anthill? Sometimes life can feel a lot like standing in an anthill. We start to question God and we start to wonder, why is this happening to me? Or why are these things able to come upon me? And if we took the time to step back and examine our lives, we would realize that it's because of where we're standing. It's because we're standing in an anthill. And immediately after realizing that we're standing in an anthill, we began to shake around. We began to brush ourselves off, trying to get all of the ants off of our legs. And the longer amount of time that we spent in the anthill before we realized where we were, the more ants were able to climb upon us, and the more damage they were able to do. But the best thing to have when you've stepped into an ant pile is a friend. Because the first thing a friend is going to do is he's going to point out and say, dude, you're standing in an anthill. And it's weird because in life, you would think that that would be the greatest thing you could hear. But sometimes what really happens is we get mad or we get frustrated because another believer comes to us and says, look, this is something that you've gotten into that you really shouldn't be doing. But we want to justify our own actions, and so we decide not to listen. Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." God has put people into your lives to sharpen you, to cut off the rough edges, to get you out of that ant pile. And when they begin to speak into your life, that's really God speaking to you saying, I don't want you to be there. I don't want you to feel the effects of where you're standing. And the greatest friend that we could ever have is Jesus. Because when we stepped into the ant pile and were unable to brush the ants off ourselves, He brushed them off for us, and He took the bite and the sting of death in our place. 1 Peter 4:1-2 says, "Therefore, since Christ has suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same purpose, because he who has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin, so as to live the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for the lusts of men, but for the will of God." If someone comes to you and says, watch out, you've stepped in an ant pile, take the time to listen, because more than likely, they've spoken out of love. And the most important thing you can do when you see your friend going someplace he shouldn't be, or stepping into something he shouldn't step into, is to speak to him in love. 1 Peter 4:8 says, "Above all, keep fervent in your love for one another, because love covers a multitude of sins."